What's up, guys? My name is Rob, the founder of HipHopRally.com and the creator of Maschine, the hip-hop beatmaker's missing manual, which is my free 60-page ebook written for machine beatmakers that are looking to get the most out of their machine. You can go ahead and grab that ebook below. It's linked in the very top of this blog article. But today we're talking about a very cool stock machine effect. Now, if you're looking to get more punch, more knock, more power and force out of your drum sound, specifically your kick drums, today's tutorial is for you. Because we're talking about the Transient Master plugin. Now, I'm about to describe to you the various ways in which you can use the Transient Master plugin in order to make the most, to get that extra 10% of greatness out of your drum sounds. So stick with me today. We're going to learn a lot about the Transient Master plugin, and I'm going to show you some examples of how you can start using it to build better sounds in your machine beats. Let's get to it. So first of all, you want to know what is the Transient Master plugin and why is it so important. That's what we're going to talk about first. I'm going to jump into describing what exactly a transient is, and then I'm going to sort of give you guys an analogy of how a transient actually operates in the real world, and maybe hopefully clarify what we're exactly talking about. Then I'm going to describe to you how you can use the Transient Master properly on a kick drum. Okay, so I'm going to show you exactly how we can turn a kick drum from sort of weak to better using this Transient Master plugin. I'm going to go in and describe all the little details of the parameters that we have to work with in this plugin, specifically input gain, attack, sustain, and this limiter. And then I'm going to talk to you about the other things that you can use the Transient Master plugin on to get a little bit extra out of your samples and sounds. So first, let's talk about what is the Transient Master and why is it so important. First of all, what is a transient? Well, a transient is the first initial hit, the spikes of a drum sound or any other sound. Transients represent basically the sound on. It's like a visual representation of the sound that you're working with. And the Transient Master plugin is adjusting this first initial burst of sound that you see. So if you look at any waveform, this is the transient right here. Like I said, the Transient Master plugin allows you to further shape the sound of your drum transients or any other transients that you want. So if you want a snappier snare drum or a more punch in a kick drum, or you want a more clearly defined bass guitar sound, you'd use your transient shaper in order to get that, your Transient Master plugin. Why does this work though? Well, human hearing is really particularly sensitive to the attack phase of your drum sounds. I'm going to describe what attack is in a second. I'm not sure exactly why human hearing is sensitive to the attack phase, but maybe back in the day when humans were hunting antelope on the savannah or something, it was extremely useful to hear for example, a twig snapping behind you or something. So fortunately, we're no longer hunting antelope with bows and arrows, but this part of our hearing developed, I guess, in an evolutionary sense to really help us. And this is basically something that is utilized when you're making music, and it helps to further define transient sounds because our hearing is really sensitive to it. So let me talk about exactly what the attack phase is for a second. So imagine a guy in a marching band with a big-ass circular bass drum strapped to the front of his chest, like one of those 3-foot bass drums that are vertical that you smack with the mallet on either side. Well, when this guy hits that skin of the bass drum with one of his mallets, what you're hearing is the attack phase. So that initial, when that mallet makes contact with that bass drum, that's the attack phase of the drum sound. The sustain phase represents that boominess that you hear after he hits the sound, about a few milliseconds after the drum is hit, and maybe like a second afterwards as well. From a few milliseconds to a second later is the sustain. Right when he hits the skin of that drum is the attack phase. So a lot of times pre-made samples can have weak attack phases. So it helps to use your Transient Master to further sculpt your sample and bring out that punchiness of that drum sound, or that snap in that bass, or that twap in that snare drum. So I typically use that Transient Master to further sculpt all of my drum sounds. The improvement is subtle, as we'll see in a second, but it definitely helps to add more polish and professionalism on top of your tracks. So that's why I pretty much use it on all of my drum sounds. So start to think of your Transient Master like that. It's specifically designed to help you further shape and sculpt your drum sounds. It'll make that initial hit of the drumstick hitting that drum, whether it's a kick, a snare, a hi-hat, more crisp and defined. And it can also use it to increase that transient, and we'll get into it in a second. But how can we use this properly on a kick drum? How can we use the Transient Master properly on a kick drum? So this would be a useful trial. If I didn't walk you through a real-world example, it probably wouldn't be that useful. So I'm going to quickly show you how to use that Transient Master plugin, and we'll go through all of the settings and stuff. So let's first of all hear what this sounds like without this Transient Master plugin. This is a kick drum. I want you to put on your headphones. Pause this right now. Put on your headphones or your studio monitor so that you can hear the subtleties of what I'm talking about. If not, you're not going to understand what I'm doing. So this is the kick drum without the Transient Master. This is it with it. So let's go ahead and describe. Let's start over again so we can see exactly what we're working with. The first setting is the input gain. And this is the parameter that allows you to adjust the gain of the drum sound. So you can squeak out a few extra decibels of volume out of your kick drum or whatever sound you're using it on. So I typically try and leave this setting alone in the very beginning. Mainly because your ears can be deceived quickly if you start adjusting volume. If you start increasing volume of the sound, you might think it actually sounds better, when in reality it's just louder. So I typically adjust all the rest of these settings first and dial these in correctly, and then I'll come back and adjust the input gain. So we'll leave this alone first. The attack phase, the attack setting, basically allows you to adjust the attack of your drum sound. It's essentially the same as any other envelope shaper. So you've seen this in ADSR mode in the sampler. As such, you can adjust the attack phase in the sampler, but it's essentially the same thing. But it allows you to subtly move the starting point of your sample forward a few milliseconds. So I typically inch up the attack phase, like subtly, like this. Watch. Subtly inch it up until I figure out a setting that I like, and I'll show you exactly how to do that. So I'm going to keep hitting this drum sound and then subtly inching up the attack. So that sounds better. I settled on 27.6%. So subtly increase the attack until you start hearing sounds that you don't like. Yeah. And then we'll move on to the sustain. The sustain parameter sets the volume of your sound once it reaches full volume. So once we reach that attack phase, whatever setting we decide on, the sustain setting determines the volume of the tail end of your sound. It'll make that volume of that tail end of your sound hold on longer. So this would be really useful if you're using this Transient Master plugin on like an 808 or something like that. It can really help to shape the end of the drum sound, not just the beginning. This particular kick drum, this isn't going to be extremely useful, but you'll be able to hear the difference between the two. So let's go on ahead and use that same method of subtly increasing the sustain until we hear what we like. It's about good right there as well. So let's audition this to make sure we're actually improving it. Turn that sustain down a little bit. So that's important to audition it. So constantly be auditioning your sounds by turning on and off the plugin that you just added to make sure that the improvements that you're making are actually, what you want them to be. And if you're constantly, if you're not auditioning your sounds and you're only adding things, your ears are becoming used to the sounds that you're working with. So you need to be constantly turning on and off your effect to make sure that you're actually improving it and not tricking yourself. The last setting is this limiter right here. And the limiter is just a very hard compressor. Okay, so a limiter is just a form of compressor. And reality, you don't really need to know how a limiter works in order to understand how to use one properly. You just need to listen. Okay, so we'll disable it and enable it to basically determine on whether or not we should turn it on or off. So this is on. So let's go with off. It sounds a little bit better in my opinion. Less distortion, less digital distortion to the sound. Okay, so I just subtly turned up the input gain. If you didn't see, it's at 1.4 decibels, so that adds a little bit more sound to this, a little bit more volume to this sound, and it sounds a little bit better to me. So that's basically what all of this Transient Master plugin is, and of course we need to audition this one more time. So a little bit better, a little bit louder, a little bit more attack, a little bit more sustain. So we talked about what exactly a transient is. I described to you that first initial hit of a drum sound. We also talked about that bass drum. Okay, so imagining that guy hitting the bass drum to describe this attack and sustain phase. We also went through this example of how to use the Transient Master properly on a kick drum. We talked about the input gain settings, the attack, the sustain, the limiter, all described how to use each one of these individual settings in a particular situation to influence your sound. Now, what other things can you use the Transient Master plugin on? Well, pretty much anything, okay? It's all about that experimentation, like I said. So you can use it on your samples in order to really make your samples more distinct. You can use transient shaping on drum sounds, and that's particularly what I use them on. Kick drums, 808s, snares, hi-hats, bass guitars, whatever. Acoustic guitars, pianos, really anything where you need to accentuate or better define the start point of a sound. So like anything that has distinct transients, Transient Master would be good on. So play around with this plugin, and as we talked about, it's extremely useful for further shaping sounds to get the most out of them. The effect of this plugin isn't huge, but it can definitely add an additional 5 to 10% of polish onto your sounds, which is very useful, especially when you use them in conjunction with other plugins chained afterwards. So what I typically would do is throw on a saturator afterwards, further define that, and make everything subtly increase the sound 5 to 10%. And in conjunction, after I've added like four different plugins after the Transient Master, it would have increased my sound about 20%. But you can't expect the Transient Master to do everything. So, yeah. So I hope this was helpful to you. And, of course, if this was helpful to you, I'm going to need you to check this out for a second. I have a free ebook called Maschine, the Hip Hop Beatmaker's Mixing Manual, written by me. This is in no way affiliated with Native Instruments. This is all my goodness, my brain doing all of this. But basically this book is for beginning machine beat makers that are looking to significantly improve the quality of their beats in a short amount of time. Now I'm sure you've opened up that machine manual that Native Instruments provides, and it is a piece of crap, okay? It is not geared towards people that are starting producing, people that are used to producing in other environments, because it doesn't really explain how to make beats. It explains how to use Maschine. This is different. This explains to you the process of making and creating hip-hop music using your Maschine. Specifically, what do we talk about in this manual? Well, I talk about things like how to find samples on the internet, e-digging. As you can see here, this chapter is about the building blocks of Maschine. So how to use sounds, groups, patterns, and scenes in order to construct beats on Maschine. We have a whole chapter here on sampling, specifically how to develop your sampling ear to help yourself make better music. So how to recognize great samples, how to choose them, how to save yourself some time and learn the best spots on the internet to sample. Also talk about a ton of other great things. Like I have a chapter on the Maschine stock effects. So like you just watched this video on Transient Master, I described to you how to use audio compression in your beats. I describe a ton of other great plugins. You talk about EQ, distortion, pretty much a ton of things. As you can see, this is 58 pages of free goodness. This is the Bible for Maschine beat makers. If you want to make better beats, this is your Bible. This is what you need to read. And like I said, this is available for 100% free. And you can get it by going on over to machinemanual.com. As you can see here, this is Maschine manual, manual.com. And you can go on ahead and get this book for free by typing in your email address and pressing click to get your free ebook. Alright, and once you click, I'm basically going to send you a confirmation email to your email inbox that you typed in to make sure that you wrote the right email address in there. Once you confirm your email address, I'm going to automatically send you a copy of this free ebook. And it might take 10 minutes for this. It automatically sends off, but be patient, wait about 10 minutes, and it'll come. And also, if you don't see it in your inbox, check your spam folder, because sometimes this gets caught by Gmail in spam folders. I don't know for what reason, but that seems to be a problem. But anyway, get your Maschine ebook. Go ahead and check out all this great stuff for absolutely free. Learn how to really significantly improve your beats in a short amount of time using this tool that you have. It's super powerful, and get to it. Thank you for watching this, and I'll catch you in the next video. Peace.